Okay, hey everyone. This is actually attempt number 2 at this video. I tried it just now and ran into a problem, so I had to restart. So this is the second part of lecture 14, and what I want to do is go through an example script, and then I'll briefly bring up the homework prompt and talk about that as well. So here's the example script on the left, and so what am I trying to do? Um, this is a script that I actually wrote last week and was really useful for me. Um, I'm the director of graduate studies, and I wrote a brochure to try to encourage people to apply to our PhD program. The brochure actually highlights some of our new faculty members. We have 4 people highlighted in the brochure. Professor Choi, who starts in winter, Professor Darivajan, who started last year and teaches 322, Professor Erickson, who also starts in winter, and Professor Wynn, who started in the fall and will teach artificial intelligence. And so basically the brochure says, please apply to our program, and also we have these great new professors. And so the 5 of us, myself and the 4 new professors, um, went and we divided up the country. I got the Pacific Northwest, Washington and Oregon. Someone got Northern California, Southern California, Idaho, Utah, Colorado, etc. And someone got international. We just looked at things in the West. And so we got a list of about 100 names who were department heads and so on. And I sent them all, or I had to send them all an email saying you should send your top students to the University of Oregon. And I wanted to attach this brochure that I just showed you. And so we all uploaded our names to a Google Drive document, and then I saved that document as a comma separated values file, or CSV. And here's what one looks like. I'm not showing you the actual file. I mean, the 100 names and the 100 email addresses, we got them all off the internet, but I don't know, they probably don't want me showing them. So I'm just showing the names of myself and then the 4 professors that were profiled in the brochure. And so, in our Google Drive, we had 5 columns, and it was, the actual file was, always were more fleshed out, but, it was what's the university, first name, last name, what's their title, and what's their email, and each of them separated by a comma. And so, what I didn't want to do was to go to webmail and compose 100 emails and paste in the email addresses of 100 different people and upload an attachment 100 times. And, the message body, write maybe 100 unique emails, or maybe cut and paste the same email 100 times and click send. And so I wrote a script that would do that for me, and I'm going to dig into that script now. So this is the script on the left, and so it looks to make sure that there's 3 arguments to the script. So the first argument is a CSV file right here. The second argument is the brochure as a PDF. We already looked at that. And the third argument is the message to send. And so here's the message. And you can see, it says, hello, my name is Hank, blah, blah, blah. Here's our people, etc. And up here it says name, and I actually, in the script, would replace name with the first name of the person that I was emailing. So you'll see that in a second. So then that was the third argument. And so then the next thing the script does is for each of the 3 arguments, it confirms it can actually find the file. So now the very first real thing it does is it wants to figure out how many people we're going to email. And so that would be like this. I could say cat all.csv, and then that would print the output. And if I pipe it into word count-l, then that says that there's 5 lines. Now you see I didn't quite do just cat all.csv and word count-l. I actually did this where I said num users equals. And if you look at this $ with the parentheses, that says go execute this command, and then whatever the prints to the terminal when you execute it. In this case, we're assigning it to the variable called num users. And so if we say echo num users, it's 5. So we now have an environment variable, num users, which is the number of lines in this file, which is the number of users, 5. The next thing I did is I wanted to set up a for loop or a while loop. I wanted to iterate over each of the users. And I wanted to use commands to take out the lines one by one. It turns out the commands to do that are 1 indexed and not 0 indexed. And so rather than going from my iterator variable from x equals 0 to x equals 5, I actually want to go from x equals 1 to x equals 6. And so I wanted to actually take num users and increase it by 1. And if you use the parentheses, double parentheses like this, you can actually do simple math operations in the shell. And so this took the number of users and added 1 to it. So let's do that there. If I say num users equals num users plus 1, and then I echo num users, it's now 6. And I set x equal to 1. And then I have this while loop, and I could say while this condition do, and there's also a corresponding, or a for condition that works similarly. And so each time I came through the loop, it would be x equals 1. And then you can see down here, we increment x, so then the next time would be x equals 2, 3, 4, 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then when we get to 6, then it would stop. And so that's this while loop in action. And you'd say while, you put a semicolon and do, and then when you terminate it, you put a done. This is similar up here. We have an if, and then a semicolon, and then we terminate it. We have fi, which is like end if. It's if, but the letters replaced. And so then what did I do? Well, the first thing that I did is I wanted to, when I was working on a given line, and so I'm just going to work on line 1, which is, let's just pick a different line. Let's pick line 4. So this would be the case where x equals 4. Then I would say cat all.csv head-n4. Now what head does is it will take the first n lines of a file. So if I say head-n4, it gives me the first 4 lines. You can see it's dropped the last line. If I said head-n1, it would be only me. Head-n2 is me and Professor Derivajan, and head-n4 is the first 4 lines. And so this is a command that's 1 indexed. It's not 0 indexed. And so I said cat all.csv, I pipe into head, and if I pipe in tail-n1, now I've isolated just the 4th line. Okay? And I saved it to an environment variable. And so here, let's do that right here. And so now I've got the 4th line as an environment variable, which is line. Now, the next thing I did is I wanted to start getting at individual pieces. In particular, I wanted to get the first name of the person to mail, and I wanted to get the email address. And so to do this, I used another command, which is the cut command. And so let me show you how that works. Echo line, and I'm going to pipe it into cut-d. And if I do this, I can get the name of the user. So I'm going to get G, that's the first name of our new professor. And so what cut does is you give it, the -d stands for delimiter. So what are you separating things by? And so in this case, we're saying we're separating by commas. And so this is the first field, the second, the third, the fourth, and the fifth. And so we're asking for the second field, which is the first name. We could have put in, a space. We could put in like an O, right? Why not? And so then this gives us everything this is F1 if we're using a delimiter of O, and then this right here is F2, and then everything following the second O would be F3. Now, of course, that's nonsense. I'm just trying to show what it looks like to choose an arbitrary delimiter. And so then I did this, and I said that the name is equal to invoke that, and so now we have an environment variable for the name. And the reason I'm setting all this up to environment variables is because I want to use it later. So for me, if I was typing at the screen like this, I wouldn't need to be saving to environment variables. I can just look at the result. But I need to put it in the script here so that I can then use it later. And by the way, this pattern where you type stuff in the terminal and then figure out exactly the commands you want to do is a really good model. You find the commands, and then once you find winning commands, you paste it over to your script. I had an issue where some of the CSV file had extra spaces, and so I used this little trick to get rid of the white space, and then I did the same thing again, except for I got field 5 to get the email address. Now this next thing uses the sed command, and the sed command is something I talked about in the lecture on the first part of this YouTube lecture. And so what I did is I would take the message, and so that's catting the message, and so you can see here's this thing where it says name, and so what I'd do is I'd run sed, and then I'd replace name with what I extracted out of with the cut command earlier, which is G, and then if I did that, well now instead of saying hello name, it says hello G, and if there were other instances of all caps name in here, it would replace those as well. But I actually constructed the email so there wouldn't be any other match. You'll note here I typed the word G. Here I had to do some quotes and put in $name. The problem is if you put in $name without all this quotes business, sed will replace name with $name or whatever it is. And so you have to add all this quotes business to tell sed, no, don't just treat it literally as $name. Evaluate that variable. The next step, and then by the way, I redirected this to a file that I called message temp, so let me do that. And then the next thing I did is I cat message temp, and I grep for hello. And this was just for me, because I just wanted to make sure that it was all working right. And then once I was sure it was all working right, I issued this pretty complex mail command. I actually had to look up how to do it. And this would mail to whoever the email address was. And so it would mail the subject connecting with potential PhD students to that email address. And then the tricky part was it was easy to get mail to send a message. It was easy to get mail to do an attachment. But doing both was hard and required some Googling. And I had to use a command I'd never heard of before called encode, and to have it send both the attachment and the message. And then I would say complete, and then I issued a sleep 5. And the reason I issued a sleep 5 is because I didn't want the mail server to think I was some spammer sending 100 emails in a fraction of a second. And so I wanted there to be a little delay in there between each email so that our Oregon mail server wouldn't think that I was up to no good. So that's the script. And I guess I should also say, here's the incrementing of x, and so each time through, x gets 1 bigger. The last thing I want to do is just quickly look at the prompt. And so the prompt has a lot of notes because I, of course, implemented a solution, and I just wanted to share the stuff that I ran into in the solution. It's starting off with this file right here, which is the so-called etc password file, or at least a copy of it. And so this is something that the Unix operating system maintains that keeps track of who all the users are on the machine. And so I added some notes in here about what the different fields are. The first field is the so-called username. The next one is supposedly an encrypted password, but it always just shows up as a star, so it's not like you can go look at it and get someone's password. A user ID, a group ID, the name of the user, their home directory, and the login shell. And so a lot of these users are to do very specific things, like LP is to print stuff. And so there's a program that will run nearly continuously to facilitate printing. And so, it runs as actually on Mac as a user who called LP to just make sure that printing is running smoothly. If you go down to the bottom of this file, then I added some entries. Now, of course, this is my copy of the etc password, and adding these entries doesn't make these users exist, but I added some familiar names of our TAs with some different shells that they might be using. And so then the prompt asks you to do two things. The first thing you're to do is to actually remove all of the entries that start with 91 through 99. So remove these 8 entries. And you'll do it with head and tail commands, and I have some coaching in there about how to figure out which line number this is on. So by the way, I'm pressing Control G, and it tells me this is line 54, and I'm doing it again, it tells me it's line 62. You shouldn't be hard coding 54 and 62 into your script. You actually have to infer those numbers, and I recommend you do it with an fgrep -n. So please read this entire prompt because there's coaching. There's essentially, I'd like you to write a script so that if I change password, this file password 212 to be some similar but different file, that you can still, it would still work. And so I don't want you to hard code any line numbers in there. So that's the first thing, and then the second thing, and so you're going to generate a new copy of this file that doesn't have any user IDs in the 90s. And the second thing you're going to do is you're going to look at the new file, and you're going to do some analysis of what shells people are using. And so many, so look down here, here's my shell. I'm using the so-called corn shell. Of course, this is all made up, but Viet using SH, Zaid using TC shell, and Priya using the C shell. And but if you look at a lot of these, they're actually using a shell called user bin false, which means that there's no shell. And so this of course, you can extract. Just thinking about my example with a comma separated file and the cut command. Well, this is a colon. The delimiters here are colons, but again, a cut command could do it, and then going for the seventh column. And so then eventually you're supposed to produce some output that looks like this, which is how many people are using each of the shells. And so the most used thing is user bin false. So anyway, that's the assignment, is to generate this output. And actually the first part took me, I don't know, 6 or 7 Unix lines of code. The second part I was able to do just one line where I did a lot of pipes in between. Again, I encourage you to read the entire prompt. I put a bunch of hints in there because there were some things that we didn't really lecture on very much. In particular, I'm recommending you sort and unique. I haven't lectured on those at all, but you could find out about it by just saying man sort, find exactly how to use it and what the flags are. Hope this is useful, and au revoir. I'll see you guys in Eugene on Sunday for office hours. Bye.